Hello, everyone. I am Melissa Forziat. I'm a keynote speaker and the host of this Halt and Catch Fire rewatch podcast. Now, when I speak, my topic is something I call Take the Doughnut, which for me is an expression that means the same as carpe diem. It's about going after what you want in life. So, what I wanted to do this year was to rewatch the show Halt and Catch Fire, but this time talk about it with other humans. And now I'm up leveling that because I'm talking with people who worked on the show, including my guest for today, who I'm about to introduce in a moment. But before we get into this lovely interview, just a quick housekeeping item. If you are brand new to the show, if you haven't seen it all the way through, the episode recaps are safe and spoiler free for you up until the episode that you're on. But these interviews are spoiler filled, so we could talk about anything from the show, and just know that up front. But I'm sure this will be a fun one if you're ready to dive in. Having said all of that, I'm very excited to introduce my guest for today, who is Jonathan Cho, who played Wonderboy, one of the, I don't know, are we calling him a mutineer?
Yeah, one of the coders, one of the coder gang.
Cool. So one of the coders, one of the programmers, one of the people from the Mutiny House, and then the Mutiny Warehouse later
Yeah,
on.
right right. Spoilers, third season, right in the new Mutiny offices. But yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like you just said, see, that was season 3, but we're going to cover episodes across seasons 2 and 3. We're in 14
I love it. I love it.
episodes of the
Yes,
show.
yeah, which was a lot of fun.
First of all,
Yes.
thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. No, it's so cool. It's been a lovely opportunity to kind of like revisit, like while you're rewatching them, I'm also kind of like, oh yes, yes, I remember. I
Yeah, this has
remember
been fun.
this.
And I'm actually, this hasn't been happening with every interview where it's lining up with where I actually am in the show,
Oh,
but
right. Hmm.
I just started doing this is probably going to come out quite a bit later, but still while you're on the show. But right now, I'm early in season 2. And so I feel like no matter when this drops, we'll still be well in the Wonderboy years
Yes.
here.
Yes. The Wonder Boy years. No, absolutely.
So before we get into any specific scenes, I'm curious how you got connected with this show to begin with. What was the process for you to get this role?
Well, absolutely. I was in Tampa when I was cast. I was repped by a lovely agency called Level Talent Group. Kelly Page and Darcy were my agents, and I was doing a lot of theater. And they sent me this audition and said, "Hey, this is a potentially recurring character. You should audition for this." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I did my tape, and then they were like, "Can you drive to Atlanta?" And I was like, "Oh, sure," for the callback. And so I drove from Tampa to Atlanta for the callback. And it's interesting because the the group that you see in the show were at that callback, and so it was a lot of like the first time I met like the actors that played Bodie and Arky and Carl. And so I did the callback, and then had to drive back down to Tampa, which was like, oh man, because you don't know. It's just kind of like I hope I did well, and now it's out of my hands, and I have 7 hours of a highway left to just think about like the audition of like, did I say it right? Did I do it right? Calling the folks and being like, think I did a good job. Um,
7-hour drive to question everything that just happened.
Yes, exactly, exactly. It's a long time. And so I got back to Tampa, and then I got the call, "Hey, will you go up to Atlanta? You got this part." And I said yes, obviously, of course. Please, thank you. And it was exciting because that was really my first TV gig. I think I kind of lucked, not the opportunity presented itself, but it was kind of right into the deep end of like, oh, this is like a production, and I'm involved. I'm involved.
It's
So
a significant role for a first TV gig.
yeah, it was a lot of learning on set, but like the same thing we had mentioned, we had talked about briefly, but just like, oh, there's a lot of people here. What are all these roles? Like, what do you do? What do you do here? I'm acting, but like, that's interesting. What are you carrying? And getting to meet like a whole like village really of it's that was the part for me of just kind of revisiting these episodes, just remembering all the people that like not just the cast but like the people, the crew on set, the people in hair and makeup, wardrobe, the grips. So yeah, it was a very exciting and eye-opening opportunity that was really sort of life-changing, and the thing that gets you to the thing. I love that that's the show. It's kind of like, oh yes, it's a thing. It's another thing. Till the
Yeah,
next
it's very meta.
Right, right.
So, you said possibly recurring when you were auditioning. Did you know that you'd be in almost every episode of season two?
I didn't, I honestly didn't know entirely what the show was, how like the first season had aired, and I had not seen it, and so I was like, Halt and Catch Fire, that's a interesting title. What is this about? And I'm like, oh, it's about computers. Um, and like so I did know that it was like reading the script kind of like, oh, okay, so these guys are like part of the environment, sort of like this is going to be the where the second season takes place. And so I was like, oh, okay. And so there was the exciting like, okay, I'll get to be here for a little bit. And um yeah, so I didn't know going into it, but one hopes. And it, yeah, it did turn out that they were sort of integral to the show, of just kind of showing that. I think the Mutiny House is a nice contrast to Westnet, like the very corporate kind of where Joe is in season two, and then something that feels a little more garage based, if you will, like just minds in a house with pizza and video games and um, talent and ingenuity. And so, yeah, I felt like, oh, I get to be a part of that. And I hope that they keep us around.
Yeah, how much did you know about the atmosphere they were trying to create in that house?
Well, the house itself kind of was super helpful in terms of kind of helping inform the characters, because it was, you walk into the Mutiny House and you're kind of like, oh wow, there's like lots of just tech stuff, like computers opened up and like wires and like mess, like food and like snacks. And um it did feel very much like, okay, this is the dream, right, of kind of like a place that where you love that you work there. And so I think that that was something that the show tried very hard to capture, of this kind of like buzzy, exciting, uh, energy filled um, environment for Cameron and Donna to sort of butt heads and then work together. And um, yeah.
Did you do anything in particular to prep for the role of Wonderboy? I mean, obviously you didn't, it sounds like you didn't know, you certainly wouldn't have known a ton about what was coming ahead in season
Right,
two.
right.
You only had so much information about the show itself. What can you do at that point to prep?
Um, One thing I had to do that the other coder cast members did not have to do was I had to get fit for a retainer, which was I think also informed it for me. Was in my head, I think I was the youngest of the bunch. And if you notice, I'm not in every episode of season two, and I think it was like partially scheduling, but in my head I'm kind of like, oh, it was a school night. Like he was doing other things, and so I had a mouthpiece that they made for me. And it was actually, I wish it, I'm going to say his name is Toby Sells, but I'm not entirely sure if that's who it is, but it's the guy who fitted my mouth. He made a retainer for me. He made the teeth for Vampire Diaries, I believe. But I had to go to his house and like get this gunk poured to make a mold of my teeth, and then I had the retainer. And you'll notice in one of the episodes that I'm eating pizza, and so I had to take it out. And I'm just holding it in my hand. But that was one of the things I was like, okay, so he's like young, he's youngish. And then the group of guys, I mean, they're all such a lovely, and not just the coders that had speaking lines. They had a bunch of background coders that really, I think, helped make it feel like a home, like a second home, where you're hanging with all your friends and waiting for them to set up the next take, and just kind of like, what are you snacking, gossiping, playing on our phones. But yeah.
I should be asking, like,
Mm.
did people keep things from set? But now that you've talked about the retainer, is that a prop you got to take home or
I do think I have it here somewhere, but yes, I did keep. I was like, you're not keeping this. They did hold on to it for me between seasons, and yeah, but I did. They did let me keep it, and I cleaned it before I brought it home with me. I made sure I cleaned it every day before I put it in and took it out for the day.
when you talk about the fact that Wonderboy was in your head one of the youngest of the bunch, which makes a lot of sense now when I think about the name Wonderboy and the prop that they gave you. But yet, when I think about that whole bunch of guys at Mutiny, I think of, there's a range in how mature they are and how much responsibility it seems like they're taking on. And, the first episode that we see you in, you're fixing not one, but at least two problems, like major problems. Like their flagship game, Parallax, is
Hmm.
down. The power goes out. You're fixing both of these things, and you're on the front lines. And I see Wonderboy as one of the more mature folks that's working there, and also maybe given more responsibility because of that. How did you see Wonderboy, and what does he think about working at Mutiny?
I think that for an ensemble, you kind of want a bunch of different flavors, And so I think that I tend to be in life in general, kind of like, well, what role do I fill in this group? And I think Josh Hoover does a great job as Bodhi, as being the sort of loud, crass. And then my dear friend Nick Pupo, who plays Carl, is kind of a little more snarky, but kind of more of a focused worker. And so I kind of like the idea of someone who's eager to, I mean, maybe that's also telling of myself a little, but eager to help, wanting to contribute and be a part. And even if it means siphoning electricity from the neighbor's house so that they can get the power running back in the Mutiny house. So I always thought of him as um, someone who really valued this sort of second family that he found, and who would do, whatever the bosses tell him to do, because he values this place that they've created so much.
Mm. You know, when we look at your second episode that you were in, so that was 202, that was New Coke. Um, your character is going to meet another character for the first time. We're going to see, Boz come into the office.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm really glad that I'm talking with you, because I feel like I don't fully understand what the perception of Boz is in the house when he first comes in.
Mhm.
So, even though you weren't there for the season one scenes, it's actually helpful that you just have the perspective of somebody meeting Boz for the first time. Boz is sent to prison at the end of season one because he and Cameron stole money so that
Right.
Heart of
Or rather,
Electric
Cameron stole the money and Boz
took
just
the fall.
just took the fall. Like, yeah, I learned how to code. Which is like,
Yeah,
wait,
and
what?
they did it together, but
Hmm.
he said, no, Cameron, you need to do the amazing things you're going to do. Let me have this one. He goes to prison, and there's a scene at the end of season 1 where a bunch of the people who are going to end up working for Mutiny are at that house, because some of them live there already, and
Hmm.
they're talking badly about Boz. They're talking like he's a criminal, he should be in jail. But when
Right.
we meet him in New Coke, or when we see him again in New Coke, he's sort of both welcomed into the house and pranked a lot. And, you know,
Hmm.
as somebody just coming into that situation, playing somebody that was meeting that character for the first time, what was your understanding of his relationship to those guys?
Well, I think for most of us, it really was our first time meeting Boz for the first time. Because I don't think everyone comes from what was the Cardiff. They
Mhm.
like only a few of the coders from Cardiff come to Mutiny, and then so you assume they added a bunch of new coders to the team. And I think in that scene where they're all talking about his letter, they've intercepted one of his letters to Cameron that he sent from prison, and August, who plays Lev, he's the one who knows him from season 1. So I think that there's also a sense of kind of like it's almost like a legend, right? Of kind of like there's this dude who worked and like and maybe Lev gave him the full story, but like the idea of kind of like he took a fall for Cameron so Cameron wouldn't go to prison. And so it's like a mixed thing of kind of like who is this guy and that's coming in and like um who's also kind of a little like outdated. You know, it's like old fashioned. Out is a more respectful way to play it. And Toby Huss is such a, I mean, the way he sort of becomes the coder's cool uncle, I suppose. It very much is the sort of the role he took for the cast. I think that he was always a lovely presence. And so it was kind of funny, like that first thing of kind of like having him walk in when we're all reading that letter of kind of like, oh no, what is he going to be scary? You know, I think that was the first thing that I was playing in my head was kind of like, okay, this dude went to jail. Is he scary? Is he going to be scary? Should we be intimidated or doing what he says more? um, I think it's Cooper who plays Yo-Yo. I think he's one who really gets in on the pranking of Boz. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's look at a couple of the other characters here. So we've got,
Mhm.
you know, in terms of Cam, so in episode 204, Play with Friends, we're going to continue the tradition of coders pitching games that are never going to happen, right? And
Right, right.
Wonderboy gets really excited about a version of Bard's Tale that he wants to make, make that the next thing for Mutiny. And Cameron's like, let's think bigger. And then she just pitches her own game idea.
Hmm.
And so, what do you think Wonderboy or the guys as a whole think about Cam as a leader on this team?
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, I think Wonder Boy thinks of her as being pretty infallible. You know, I think he's impressed with her catalog of games and the fact that she's gave him a job and put together this place for them to make games. I love the pitch because I also feel like it's a nod to Lee Pace because I believe the line is it's we should do our version of the Bard's Tale, except at the end you find the princess is a hobbit in disguise. And I was, you know, at the time Lee Pace was doing the Hobbit movies as the Elf King, and so in my head I was kind of like, oh, this is a nice little like I don't know if it was, but I'm like in my head as the actor I was kind of like this is a nod for all the Lee Pace fans. Um, but I do think that he feels that Cameron is like the coolest. And so if you'll notice, and then I'm jotting down. It's supposed to be cold, and so I had those little gloves on, but trying to jot down everything she's saying because it's gold. She's giving us gold. Um,
Oh, that's cool. So let's talk about Donna. So there's a regrettable moment of play for Wonderboy where he's got a Nerf dart gun and he accidentally hits Donna with it and she pulls it out of his hands and just like shoots him into the
Yeah,
ground with it.
the
She's the
clip.
mom with the edge, right? I mean,
Yeah.
she's wow, what is her relationship to the guys at the office?
I think that she's, and it's so interesting because like I know that it's something that she struggles with that season of like not wanting to have to be the mom in the office when it's clear that that's the role that I'm sure most of the coders have pinned her in. Um, and I love that, I think her unloading the clip on me was so fun because I one of the things I personally like loved about the show was the portrayal of such like fierce, unapologetic women leaders. And one of the things that like I know I didn't want to like muddy the story at all was the idea that this environment that they created really did um, value them and respect them, as opposed to, in the later seasons when they start getting into the venture capitalist office and like the way people talk and treat them. I wanted that to not be an issue in the Mutiny House, where it was just like, yes, they are our bosses and they rock. And there's no question, like no second guessing, no man's like if anything they're the ones having to explain everything to us twice because um they are Cameron and Donna, the coolest women uh in tech.
Awesome. That that scene kind of sets up for the fact that there's going to be a Nerf dart battle, I guess, in the
Yeah,
house, like throughout the house. And that was a really cool, interestingly shot sequence. Can you tell me anything about shooting that?
it's with a GoPro, right? They have a GoPro on Cameron, so it follows her around like her, it's not her point of view, but it's like just her face. That episode was directed by Kimberly Pierce, who directed Boys Don't Cry, which is an amazing movie. But she had planned, she had a map, I think, um, like a little map of the Mutiny House with where Cameron was going to go and which closet she was going to end up in. And like, I think one of the great things about that house, the Mutiny House, was they could pull off so many cool like sequences. Like in the pilot episode, there's that really long one take of where it's just like it doesn't cut. It's just the camera goes through the house into that room with like all the computers, then goes through the kitchen, then back through the living room, and something similar happened for the dart gun. The dart gun is there was a track that she took that the camera could follow. Um,
That's interesting. Very
yeah,
different, innovative way of shooting for that episode. So, another sort of slight tonal shift, and it feels like a reference to me, is in 206. So it's called 10 Broad 36. The Mutiny team is trying to trick Joe into
right.
thinking that they've actually made changes to their platform that he's asking for so that he can give them a lower rate to use the server. But they don't really want to do it, so they're going to go through this whole thing where they're trying to pretend like they've made the changes and trick him into it. They're going to bring him into their office and like have him use a mock-up that's like just barely functional, and it feels a little sort of like heist movie Ocean's 11 to me in
Yes.
the way they've sort of put it together in the edit. And I'm wondering how much of that you felt on set.
I think like it did kind of feel like we were getting away with something, It's they shot a lot of those kind of um when they're messing with like the like I think they're like gluing a tape recorder onto a motherboard or um yeah, all those scenes I like felt really cool to be a part of just kind of like, oh yeah, are we gonna pull this off? Um and then the scene with when Joe is sitting at the like that felt I remember it feeling the palpable tension of just kind of like looking at each other and kind of be like, okay, is this gonna work? And like sort of knowing that it doesn't because we had seen sort of the sides, but also like in the moment, like not knowing, kind of like, oh, maybe we're gonna get away with this. And I love how Lee Pace plays that, just like, oh, your computer's melting.
Yep.
um, but yeah, that was a lot of fun. I do remember that feeling, um, feeling really, really cool. Like it was a really cool experience to be part of.
So with Lee Pace, after that episode, we're going to see Lee Pace, well, Joe, tender an offer to buy Mutiny. And initially, Cam rallies everybody to sort of shout him out of the house. But then the guys sort of like pieced together the torn up offer letter, and
Right.
some of them are thinking they do want to sell, but Wonderboy does not. So I'm curious, like what makes him want to stay at Mutiny despite the risks that they run and the challenges they've had and the fact that a good offer has been made. What makes him want to stay?
What's interesting is like when I watched the season two, in my head I was kind of like knowing what an audience knows of kind of like, oh, Lee Pace might have, or Joe might have been sincere, and this might be a really good offer, you know? And so in my head, I'm kind of like, oh no, they should take the offer. But I think as Wonder Boy, I think it's again trusting Cameron and even the idea of potentially losing the family, that sort of I mean, they could move into like their own campus. And that's what Joe was offering, I think, which is like, oh no, they could have had that. But yeah, if I guess like fear too, of kind of like being afraid of losing what you have. And so like, do you take a risk to make money but potentially lose um your your house, like your environment, your uh, I don't know. Are you familiar with the phrase rat park? Yeah. So it's like that of kind of like, oh, why mess with it if it like works, you know? And so I think that's very much where he was coming from of like, I don't want money if it means losing this. And like not knowing that like, oh, taking the money doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna lose that.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting to hear that point of view, and you were obviously putting yourself in Wonderboy's shoes for that. And as a viewer, who knows whether Joe's offer is sincere or not,
Right,
even after
right.
the fact. Like it's a bit of a gamble. Um, so in 208 Limbo, a couple of major things happen in that episode. First of all, we have a party. We have a party that goes from day into night. There's a lot going on there. A lot of people, most of the time that show is very intimate and small, and like you're not dealing with a whole lot of people, and the mutiny party is like some of the most
Yes.
extras we'll see on set at any point. So how was it to film that?
That was fun. That we were at that house, like you said, all day and all night, into the night. Um, and I like meeting people, and so it was cool because there were a lot of people on set that day. And um, there's his name is Iron Kuykendall. I don't know if I just butchered his last name, but he was the I'm gonna forget the title, but he was the person who was very involved with making sure that all the background actors were had assignments like, okay, in the scene you're walking from here to there, or like, oh, you're carrying this cup, hold this, and like sort of doing a lot of that. And so um, between him and like all the other background actors, it was very fun to just kind of hang out all day until you were called. And um, yeah, there was a DJ. That one had like a DJ. And then like the dancing, I remember there was like dancing and the dancing was a lot of fun too. It was a long day, but it was a very fun day. I remember it being.
It's amazing that that was all just shot in one day, actually, because it feels like a lot of stuff.
I'm trying to
That
think if like they filmed any like if they filmed any of the other stuff on a separate day, because sometimes with like the principal cast, they might have like got in a day early to like maybe the scene with Cameron and Tom before they get busted by the mutiny coders. Um, they might have filmed that on a separate day, but I do remember it being like oh, and Yo-Yo comes back, right? That's he quit earlier in the season and then he shows up for the party.
and Lev comes back because Lev had just been put in
Right.
the hospital, so
He's been
it's sort of a
hospitalized.
reunion for a lot of
Right.
people.
And so it was right. It was, and that was nice because again, we hadn't seen Cooper in a little bit, and so it was nice seeing him again. It was a really, I keep saying it, like it was a real fun time, but I do look back on my time on Halt and Catch Fire as being like one of the loveliest like experiences. Um,
Oh, that's really nice to hear. I mean, let's look a little bit at season three because there's so much to say about season two, but I want to make sure we get to cover season
oh,
three
sure.
as well. And in 301, Valley of the Heart's Delight. So we've jumped in forward in time a little bit. It's 1986 now. We've jumped to a new city. We're in San Francisco now. And we're in a really like a warehouse, a bigger office space that is just
Yes,
it
yeah,
just seems like so much bigger than what you were just dealing with at the Mutiny
right.
House. So what do you remember about what atmosphere the show was trying to capture about this new time and new location?
Well, this is something that's really cool. Is the Mutiny House is where the loft offices were. They just took out the house. Like so, it was the same sort of set, but like walking into the first time of kind of like, oh, this is where the front porch was with the swing. That's gone. Now it's like these steps up into this like open, like big windows. Um, the like the cityscape outside the windows, I think, were just like a big canvas with like a cityscape printed on it. But it was the same space, which was like wild to me because I was kind of like, okay, yeah, we were here last year, but now we're in a different building. Um,
That blows my mind.
isn't it crazy? Yeah, it's like it's so cool. And again, there were like people. I don't think I met everyone that worked on *Halt and Catch Fire*, and not just like in terms of cast, but like in terms of people who like built the sets and worked in the offices. And so, yeah, like when I came in, it was built, and so I'm kind of like, oh, there were people working here for a while before we got here, obviously. And again, I think that the set helped inform the characters again because like in the 90s we're like, okay, we got on the plane at the end of the season. We're in this new city. I think they even dressed us like a little cooler. I don't know. I love the clothes that we had, but like, yeah, in season three, I do remember being like, oh, can I keep this? Um, but yeah, and then everyone had sort of their own desk, which was cool because, well, the same thing was in season two. Everyone sort of has their spot in the house, but like in the new mutiny offices, I remember being there and kind of being like, oh, where am I going to sit? And oh, they don't show up until later when they merge with the new coders that get introduced in the middle of season spoilers in the middle of season three, which was also cool to get to work with them.
Yeah. I mean, we're spoiling everything here. It's fine. Don't worry.
I know.
Let's talk about 304 rules of honorable play. Another game scene. We're going to get a laser tag scene, which is it just looks different than almost any other scene from this show.
Mm,
Both because it's very dark and you have to, it has to be well choreographed. And, we're seeing the laser tag, you have to get it, you want the lighting to look right.
right,
So,
right.
what was it like to shoot this?
I think there was I do remember there being a lot of fog. I think I think there was a lot of fog so the lasers would show, but it was I, I couldn't tell you where, but and I don't know if they're still there, but there was an actual laser tag place that we went to. And yeah, it was cool again to be there. I think I'm eating pizza like in that like when we're on the floor, which was really cool to just be eating pizza in a laser tag arena with all the lights going on. That was fun because Scoot was in there with us. Scoot got to be one of the he got to be our fearless leader. Um, Something really cool about that episode I remember is the director Jake Paltrow asked the coders to watch One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest together. Um, and we did. Like I think that I remember that as being like one of the nights we all got together, the new coders included, and we all watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And it was great. It was a really great bonding experience. And then we played laser tag the next day. Um, and I remember the kid who read the rules. Like that guy was great. The one who's he's got such a baby face, but he's like the one who's like, you gotta listen to me. I remember him being really fun. Wish I could remember his name. But yeah, that
When
was
he
the
has to basically throw Gordon out at the end, too.
right, right. He gets kicked out because, and that was great. The busting through the wall, or throwing that dude through the wall, which was so cool. Because I think they had a couple of walls prepared. They're like, instead of like rebuilding it every time, they just like swap out the wall. But that was real cool to do. And I keep saying cool and fun, but like again, it was a great experience with my coder friends in a laser tag place.
What other kinds of things did you do to, obviously there's a lot of different things that those guys did to bond in the show, a lot of different games they played, but what did you do when the cameras weren't rolling to bond together?
Uh, the I will say the actor I became closest with, Nick Pupo, we bonded real quick because we were the Florida boys. We were the two actors that got cast out of Florida, and we would drive home between episodes, and that, as I mentioned, that 7 8 hour drive is a very fast way to like you're like, okay, I hope we like each other, and we bonded that way. Listened to a lot of music. The first season, our uh, one of the I believe script supervisor, Amy, was very kind enough to let us crash at her place for like a little bit when we first got there. And then I think one of the one of the guys got rented like a house, and so we were also living together sort of off set when we were shooting, which was a great bonding experience as well. And then on set, um I would bring my guitar sometimes, and like um me and Nick and JB who plays Robot, um and we would sing songs and hang out. There was also like really always really good craft services and always really good food. So snacking and yeah, bonding. Talking about shooting auditions. Like some of the cast would get auditions while we were on set. So like sneaking away to one of the trailers and shooting an audition really quick and submitting it. Um, yeah, it was a really um, it, it kind of just was what it was, like in the show. like it did feel kind of like, oh, these are my coworkers, but also my family, my Atlanta family.
I love that there was sort of like an off-camera mutiny house in addition to there being an
Yeah.
on-camera mutiny house. I want to ask you about a much more serious scene, maybe probably the most serious scene any of you were in on this show, and You Are Not Safe from 308.
Yes.
There's quite the shot of you because there's a point when we're sort of reading Ryan's letter aloud, his manifesto that he left behind when he committed suicide, and it's about like security, this whole thing that Joe was trying to sell for the entirety of season 3. He's like, it's all a myth, we're not safe, we're not secure. And we were seeing it on screen, but we're hearing him read it, and then we're kind of getting shots of different characters from the show, and we see a really prominent moment with you. And we're still hearing the voiceover from the actor who plays Ryan, but it's a very powerful scene. And I imagine you get, I don't know if you had the whole script, if you had sides, how much did you know about what you were filming? Because you guys were just sitting there looking at into space, but
Yeah.
it's meant to be something very heavy. What did you know about it?
Right, right. Like I'm supposed to be reading the letter off of the lap or off of the monitor, but obviously there was nothing on the monitor. Um, I think we all sort of knew how to play it because I think we had also just shot the wait, is that the same episode where the stock crashes, right?
Yes, I believe that's where Mutiny goes public and it doesn't open well.
Right, right. And so it's kind of like you got the sense of kind of like, oh, Mutiny just um got uh creamed after they went public, and then knowing Ryan, the coders had the opportunity to work with him in the beginning of the season before he left and started working on that project with Joe. Um, and just like the words of the speech. The director of that episode, Reed Morano, was awesome, and I remember her actually being like, "Stay right there. We're gonna get a shot of you." Um, and I remember thinking of kind of like, "Oh, this is it's like maybe this is the end." It was super cool to be in 2 seasons, but like if Mutiny, goes under and these coders are out of a job, like, and if if there isn't another season, it's like this is how it ends, and it's a little not bleak, I guess realistic. It's like I think the optimism that Wonderboy had like through all the episodes of kind of like, oh, this is like sometimes it's just this is how the chips fall, and it's like um after all the tumultuous ups and downs of just I remember the screaming match in the office between Cameron and Donna, of like I remember being in the outside of that and kind of being like, oh wow, something intense is happening in there. um and so yeah, just being grateful, but also like, you know not resigned, but if this is it, this is it. Maybe we are not safe.
Where do you think Wonderboy is now?
Um, that's interesting. I like that there's a little coda for them in episode 4. I think the one they mention is Carl. Carl got into adult websites, I believe. It's Wonderboy. They say he's teaching, right? He's teaching like digital film, which I love for him. I think if he had had a like a camcorder or a digital camera, like I feel like he would have been the one kind of, this is my video blog, my vlog about my time in the Mutiny offices, or his own YouTube channel maybe. But I think he's teaching, which is also similar to where Joe ends up, which is super cool. Oh, spoils. Sorry.
No, totally fine.
You should watch it. You should watch it and watch it again.
Watch it, everybody. Just if honestly, the things we have spoiled in these interviews, they're completely out of order, and it's wonderful. Are there any cast and crew members that you haven't had a chance to shout out that you really loved working with? I just wanted to give you that opportunity to say, oh yeah, this person was amazing, whether they were on camera or behind.
I'm just so bad at this because I always feel like I'll be forgetting someone, but it did feel very much like a family. There's so many people I want to shout out. Like there's Yvonne in the makeup trailer, and then Billy Sullivan, the set medic. I want to shout out some of the background coders, like Wing, Zachariah Rogers, who's on P Valley. He had a really great arc on P Valley. Sam Lazarus. Oh gosh, and then the transpo people, Joe, Leona, Sherry. I miss everyone, and so thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to just revisit sort of that time and all those. I want to reach out to them. I might reach out. Oh, you should hit up Melanie Ragone, one of the grips. She would be a great interview, I believe. And yeah, and the other grip, Lance. I'll shout out my other grip buddy, Lance. But yeah, I think that's. And if I didn't mention you, I'm sorry. I remember you. I panic.
When this goes live, there's comments. You can type in names that you didn't get a chance to shout out. This is not the end. This is just the thing that gets us to the thing. Thank you. One last question: is there anything that you've done recently, or that that's come out recently that you want people to go see? Something that you've worked on?
Yeah, I'm gonna be playing The Great Gatsby on stage out here in Hollywood. The first, and if this released before May 1, 2, 3, but those are the dates that I'll be doing Gatsby. And then if you get a chance, I am grateful to Halt and Catch Fire because thanks to Halt, I was able to take the time off to write a solo show that I've been sort of touring. It's called Mr. Yinioshi. And I play Mickey Rooney, developing his character for Breakfast at Tiffany's. It's a comedy solo show that talks about yellow face and representation, and I play Mickey Rooney in it. And yeah, it does feel like that might be the thing that Halt would like. Oh, Halt was the thing to get me to the thing to allow me to do that show at the New York and Hollywood Fringe Festivals and get a chance to tour with that.
That's amazing. That sounds like a really interesting idea of something to shoot. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time to have this conversation. I just am so appreciative of that.
Thank you. And yeah, keep watching the podcast and keep watching the show. It's well, I'm sure you're going to get some really cool interviews. I can't wait to see who you get on next.
Oh, thank you for that. And to everybody who's watching, like Jonathan said, go out there and watch Halt and Catch Fire. Okay, everybody? All right. Bye, everyone.